Picture this. You sit down with a new show and get immediately hooked on the premise. Maybe it's unique or maybe just well executed. But as the show goes on, characters start referencing something that just screams tragic backstory. Nothing major has happened yet, but every time it's referenced, it cuts deeper and deeper into the story you're actually invested in, until one day, everything breaks loose. Suddenly everyone is sad, everything is going wrong. It's no longer the lighthearted comedy you started out with. Sure, it recovers over time, but that's still time wasted on things you don't really care about. Maybe rather than tragic backstory, the entire premise itself gets turned on its head. Maybe the main character begins with clear motivations and a course of action, but by the end of the story, nothing is left the same. That is what I'd like to talk about today. When the entire point a show is trying to make takes a complete 180 in either its execution or its progression. Today I'll be taking a look at a few different shows that have done this to me, and discuss why it's so aggravating, as well as some of the potential warning signs. First up is the 2013 romantic comedy Golden Time. Now, I haven't watched it since it was airing, so forgive me if I get any minor plot details wrong. But when it did start airing, I was at the peak of my romantic comedy binge, so of course I hopped right on week to week. Even though I already loved the genre, I could tell that Golden Time was trying to be different. It was a lighthearted romantic comedy that nonetheless clearly targeted a more mature demographic, as evident by its more mature themes and setting, university in this case. The series began shortly before our main character, Tada Banri, began dating his newfound best friend's ex-girlfriend, Kaga Koko. The two fell quickly in love and the story began blossoming around them. And with that story came increasingly strong themes of genuine love and mature questions regarding adult sexuality. All in all, it was a very solid romance constructed between two generally likable leads. But soon we get our first glimpse of trouble. When we meet Banri's childhood friend, Hayashida Nana, we begin sensing that something is going on between the two of them. Though even that is to be expected. After all, the romance genre would be virtually non-existent without the love triangle setup. But the real problem shows up right around the halfway point. After being kidnapped by a cult, Banri informs Koko that he suffers from retrograde amnesia, meaning that he has little to no memory of his time before enrolling in university. In a more fantastical and dramatic story, this would be an acceptable, albeit cliched, character trait, but it really has no business coming out of left field with absolutely no warning in a romantic comedy. But even worse, this isn't just a one-off mentioning, it actually becomes a major plot point for the rest of the story onward. Most of the character drama begins revolving around Banri's condition, and the entire last few episodes focus almost solely on Banri coping and trying to recover. As if that wasn't bad enough, later on, Banri's condition takes another massive spike, losing any remaining realistic grounding. We learn that the literal ghost of Banri's pre-amnesiac life has been haunting him since the accident. Now that I'm reading the script out loud, it's even stupider than I remember it. Apparently, most of the accidents that have been happening around Banri, especially those relating to romance, have been intentionally caused by pre-accident Banri intent on ghost-cucking himself. If it wasn't self-evident, this ludicrous plotline came completely out of nowhere and sullied an otherwise reasonably outstanding show. Apparently, the original author didn't think that her work could be carried on a mundane school-life premise and felt the need to include the entire amnesia plotline. Why though? It didn't really benefit what people actually came for. What it did do, however, was get people who otherwise wouldn't have cared involved in the show. Those who ordinarily wouldn't have gone out of their ways to watch a rom-com can now watch Golden Time and find enjoyment in it. But ultimately, who cares? The premise is, in many ways, the meat and potatoes of the show and should generally stay consistent throughout the narrative. Outlandish deviations, outside of rare exceptions, take a premise that people like and can either genericize it or, in this case, provide unwanted developments. And now let's take a look at this same phenomena occurring in the opposite direction. This season's Masamune-Kun no Revenge began with a very strong premise, and is slowly losing steam over the course of the season. Now, I'm writing this having only seen up to episode 9, so I don't know the ending yet, but I can guess based on what's happened so far. The series is about the titular character Makabe Masamune exacting his titular revenge. In childhood, Masamune was a fat kid who had a crush on a girl named Aragaki Aki, a beautiful girl who lived nearby. After confessing to her, she ruthlessly declines him and gives him the nickname Pig's Foot. Afterwards, Masamune decides to go live with his grandfather in the mountains, training for 8 years for one specific purpose. That purpose? To become the perfect, most appealing man in order to have Aragaki fall in love with him, just so he can break her heart. While not the most original premise in the world, it's not one that I've seen animated before, and is a genuinely funny motivation, capable of letting the viewer in on a comedy unseen to any of the characters other than Masamune himself. If throughout the series, Masamune was shown to be near boiling over with hatred, meanwhile acting suave and loving, or if Aragaki was shown to be falling in love while Masamune was internally monologuing about how much he hates her, we could have gotten several layers of dramatic irony. Not only that, but the series would have had a clear end goal with a satisfying conclusion as defined by the first episode. But that's not what we're getting. Instead, Masamune is only half-heartedly following his original plan, and all the while falling in love with Aragaki. It may be decently believable, but is not at all satisfying to watch. Every time Masamune questions why he's doing this, or when he feels a genuine pang of affection, I just roll my eyes, knowing that it's too late for me to bail, yet I can see that I'm not getting the comedy show I originally signed up for. Because the author this time felt the need for a defined pair of lovers, we're abandoning the entire hook of the show in favor of some generic couple. Imagine how we could have had both, while maybe even throwing in extra drama. If Masamune had fallen in love for real with Fujinomiya Neko, while pretending to love Aragaki, we'd get to see the dichotomy of his interests. Especially if we got to see him balancing how he acts around the two girls. Instead, Fujinomiya feels simply shoehorned in, while Aragaki serves both roles, but unfortunately doesn't serve either well. Next up, I'd like to talk about a sort of combination of these two problems, and how it destroyed the ending to one of my top 5 favorite shows of all time. Oreimo. But before we get into it, I'd like to try deflecting some comments by saying that yes, I know Oreimo has some major flaws, but I still genuinely enjoy it and find it fun. Maybe one day I'll make a whole video about it, but for now, let's get back to the subject. For those unaware, Oreimo is short for Ore no imoto ga konna ni kowai wake ga nai, which translates to, my little sister can't be this cute. As can be expected from the title, it's a story about a brother and sister getting close to one another through her love of anime. But don't worry, it's not weird, and both seasons are sure to stress that their relationship is nothing other than the part of siblings. In fact, at several points, Kyosuke has the opportunity to date other girls, and the two are always stressing the fact that they're just siblings and get annoyed when anyone suggests otherwise. A show wouldn't betray its entire point and subtext, right?
好きで好きでしょうがねえんだよ。俺は妹を愛しちゃってる変態なんだよ。あんたこれ聞いての通りだ。
Yeah, it did. And in the process, destroyed any sort of reputation that it had built up over the years. Why would they do this? I still don't know. What I do know is that I don't even like to acknowledge the existence of these last few episodes because the whole show was ruined by straying from the initial premise. And before you say, yeah, but they didn't actually get married, it was only a symbolic thing. No. Just no. Not only is it still creepy, but that just makes it extra dumb. And lastly, let's discuss another currently airing show, Kobayashi-San Chi no Dragon Maid. This show falls into the trap I first talked about in the intro. Overall, it's a wonderful, upbeat comedy show filling you with the warm fuzzies. But Toru keeps having these thoughts and flashbacks. They don't last long, but it makes it clear that Toru has a tragic backstory. Defend it all you like, but one day soon, I'm sure that we're going to have to deal with this backstory, and it won't be a happy time. This stems back to a problem with the academic story structure. It's widely accepted that all stories need to have a problem or dilemma for the protagonist to encounter. Think of more or less any story in any medium, and there will almost certainly be some sort of major problem to be overcome. See, but my thing is, I don't think that all stories need a big dilemma, or even a sad middle arc. I think that many stories would be perfectly fine, if not improved, by maintaining a happy atmosphere and simple plot. Something that has bugged me since I was 7 years old was the entire sad portion of Kiki's delivery service. It didn't need to happen. Kiki could have been doing plenty of things in the time otherwise spent without her powers. There were dozens of other events that could have occurred, but that didn't happen. Instead, we had to abruptly cease our happy, upbeat attitude and instead watch Kiki be sad for 20 minutes. Sure, everything works out in the end, but what if we had gotten something actually enjoyable out of that time? It would have boosted the quality of an already amazing film. Now, I'm not saying that plot progression isn't important, but when that progression comes at the expense of a show's quality out of a sense of necessity, it isn't worth it. If the viewer needs to totally shift gears to enjoy whatever's happening on screen, maybe the plot shouldn't be progressing in that direction after all. Hey guys. I have no idea how to start out this end slate. I am absolutely speechless at the reception of my Konosuba video. In the week that has passed since the time of recording this, my subscriber count has jumped from 201 to 890. That video has 25,106 views. I honestly cannot thank you all enough. This boggles my mind. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And to get some introductions out of the way, hi, I'm Senpizzle, and I upload dumb, stupid anime stuff every other Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I'm in both school and work full-time, so I can't dedicate quite as much time to YouTube as I'd like, but if you'd like to help me make this my full-time job, you can support me over at patreon.com/Senpizzle. In the meantime, you can also follow me on Twitter with my handle @Senpizzle. I'd also like to let you know that I've ordered a new microphone, so hopefully you can expect a jump in audio quality in the next video. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.